Hi, and welcome to chapter 13.4, our last topic, and we're looking at the two hormones, insulin and glucagon, and how blood sugar is regulated with them. So for this, we're looking at the pancreas, and we've heard of the pancreas with its digestive function, making digestive enzymes that are released into the small intestine. But in this topic, we're looking at how there's also clusters of cells in the pancreas that make hormones. And when blood sugar is high, we're going to see that we need the hormone insulin to store the sugars into our cells. And when blood sugar is low, we need the hormone glucagon to release extra blood sugar for our muscles to use. So particularly like if we're exercising, we would have glucagon released. There's a picture of your pancreas and how it's actually situated between the kidneys. And zooming into a section of the pancreas, we see that there are alpha and beta cells in these islets of Langerhans, these islets or islands of endocrine cells. And the rest of that pancreatic tissue would be cells that make the pancreatic enzymes. So the cells, the alpha cells, are the ones that make glucagon that will help to release stored sugars and raise blood sugar. And for that, the glucagon is going to target the liver so that it can break down its liver glycogen. So liver has stored the sugars that after you eat, and stores it in these large molecules called glycogen. So glucagon is targeting your liver to release that if your sugars are low. Glucagon also targets fat cells, and that is another area that carbohydrates are stored in and stored as fat. So glucagon targets them as well. And in turn, what's going to happen is our blood sugar will go up in response. The beta cells are the ones that release insulin, and this is at mealtime. What happens is we have all our food broken down and circulating in our blood for a few hours after we eat, and insulin at that time is needed to store those sugars in the liver as liver glycogen, in the fat cells, and also in all the body cells. And so if someone is not able to make their own insulin, like a diabetic, someone with diabetes mellitus, they would have to then inject insulin or have a method of getting insulin into their blood to store sugars at each meal. And so once these this sugar storage happens, our blood sugar will go back down. And basically our blood sugar has an optimal level, and so insulin and glucagon will maintain that optimal blood sugar level. They work in complement to each other, just like calcitonin and parathyroid hormone. So they will continue to have that balancing effect on blood sugar. And so that's what this picture is showing us, how normal blood sugar is achieved. When it's low, we have glucagon released. When blood sugar is high, we have insulin released until we're back at the homeostatic normal amount of sugar. And in your notes, you have this picture that just is maybe one you can color in with highlighters or something, but it shows you your pancreas right in the middle and says that when your blood sugar is low, like on the left here, it will be glucagon that takes your liver glycogen, the stored liver glycogen, and releases it as sugar. If your blood sugar is high, it will be insulin that will cause that sugar to be stored in your liver, in your body cells, fat cells, sorry, and in your muscle cells. This is a picture of one molecule of liver glycogen, and it's kind of just shocking to see that contains about 1 million molecules of glucose. So sugars are stored in these very large macromolecules for using all their space efficiently in the liver. The blood sugar disorder, diabetes mellitus, is not to be confused with diabetes insipidus, which is a lack of ADH in terms of and causing someone to lose water. Diabetes mellitus, the word diabetes refers to the loss of water, but in this case, it's because sugars are not stored. Sugars will then stay in your bloodstream. That will be making it hypertonic. Water will come out of your body cells to try dilute that very sugary blood, and for that reason, there's a lot of water loss, a lot of urine formed if someone has untreated diabetes. There's 3 kinds. One of them is type 1 or juvenile onset, and young people may have that happen somewhere between age 9 and 11, and they're not able to make insulin and will need insulin from there forward. This graph is showing you that if you are normal, non-diabetic, there are fluctuations of blood sugar somewhere between 90, 100, 110 milligrams per deciliter. But you notice that they're mentioning here that the square means they have had food. So when they have food, blood sugars rise, but insulin is going to be released to, especially if it's higher than the normal, the average blood sugar level, the ideal blood sugar level. That's when, if it goes higher than that, that's when insulin will be released to bring it back down to normal. And so here we see again, it went above normal, so insulin is released to bring it back to normal. Sometimes if someone hasn't eaten for a long time or they are exercising, it really tends to dip low, but you can see that the fluctuation is right in here. If they are diabetic, on the other hand, when they eat, it rises and is not able to be stored quickly with someone lacking insulin. So the fluctuations are going to be around maybe triple and potentially having triple the amount of blood sugar at any one time. So that is just showing how, very hypertonic, how much sugar can be contained in the blood with a diabetic. So when there's blood sugar issues, carbs can be monitored, blood sugar should be monitored, insulin will be needed daily at all meal times. There's technologies like insulin pumps and islet cell transplants, but also all sorts of new types of technology is always being just kind of in the news with all sorts of digital monitoring systems and automatic insulin like transmitting devices. This is an insulin pump that puts the appropriate amount of insulin into the blood. This is a look at how islet transplants would be taking islet cells from a donor, from a pancreas, and they would put them right into or on top of the liver because both insulin and glucagon work with the liver. Insulin stores sugars in the liver and glucagon releases liver sugars. So that's an appropriate place, a common sense place where you would see those islet cells transplanted. Type 2 would be adult onset diabetes, and this is when cells are not responding to insulin or making less insulin, and this is the one that would not yet need the insulin put into the bloodstream. You'll notice that when someone is receiving insulin, it is not something that they can take as a pill, because the stomach would digest insulin, the hormone. It's a protein hormone. It would be digested by the stomach's protein enzymes. And so that's why it's insulin has to be injected right into the bloodstream. So type 1 then is needing insulin. Type 2 is monitoring. We're using other methods to monitor blood sugar with some other medications. The third kind of diabetes is gestational diabetes that happens during pregnancy, where someone may need insulin during pregnancy because of the demands of a second little person that is also using your blood sugar. Sometimes it is difficult for pregnant women to control their sugar levels, and often they will deliver the baby and their blood sugars will go back to normal, and their hormonal control will go back to normal. Sometimes that may not happen, and they may remain a diabetic. There is that chance. Coma and shock. I want to mention those two. Diabetic coma is when someone is not getting the insulin they need to store sugars, so their brain and cells are being deprived of sugar, and so maybe insulin wasn't injected. Whereas insulin shock is too much sugar, too much insulin given, so that some people might, it's not a good practice, but some people might think their food is coming at a restaurant, inject their insulin, but the food doesn't arrive, and then they have insulin shock, where they've stored absolutely all the sugar that they have in their body, and then they're just getting like dizzy, confused, and it's causing issues with the brain because there is no sugars left in the bloodstream. So there's a couple other disorders. That brings us to our final two feedback loops. So please copy this down. It here says that these are both monitored by sensory cells in the pancreas themselves, so the brain is not used in this feedback loop. But when there is high blood sugar, then it's insulin that is going to cause the sugar, the glucose, to be stored in the muscles and fat and as liver glycogen. Whereas if you're getting low because you exercised, it will be glucagon that will cause that release of the sugars into your blood and cause the fat to break down into sugars as well. So you can copy those two feedback loops. I did this extra picture just with the liver glycogen molecule in the middle here with the liver, and to say that when you eat and your sugars are high, it's insulin that stores it, and if you exercise and your sugars are low, it would be glucagon that gets the sugars back in the bloodstream. And so there's a nice way to just make a nice red bloodstream here, just because it's fun to do. Okay, so check out your collection, guys. You should have entirely 11 feedback loops in your whole collection of feedback loops. These couple of hormones are just extras. You will not be tested on these. The thymus in the chest was on your diagram at the beginning, and that is where T cells are going to mature, and those are to help with your immune response. Mostly children will have that, more active than adults as they're developing their immune system. Melatonin is secreted by the pineal gland for circadian rhythms like sleep-wake cycle, mating of animals, so when they know when it's mating season and when to migrate. And pheromones are tiny chemicals that flow through our bodies as well and do little jobs, like they are chemical messengers, but not exactly hormones. And pheromones are also how they feel animals find their mate. And little prostaglandins are all the other little chemical messengers. These are some little extras. Good couple endocrine review videos that you can check out. And that is chapter 13. It's a wrap. Thanks for joining me, and bye for now.